So today I want to talk a little bit about the motivation behind making the song Sudden Drifts and why it was the first single I ever made and that sort of thing. So I was actually intending to release this video earlier. I then actually recorded a version of this that I'd completed and finalized, and then I found out last minute that the whole file got corrupted or something, so I had to reshoot everything. So I apologize for the delay, and then I had some stuff come up, and so I had been promoting for a few days, so I had been basically pretty busy, but it's time for me to come back to my business and come back to talking to you guys about everything. So the motivation behind Sundros really was just I had to start somewhere. So this was kind of my first single where I was really going to talk about my experience in real life. I think the last demo that I made was called The Palace. I think that was just kind of an idealized version of a rap that was just like, oh, I imagine myself being in this big giant palace where I'm doing whatever. And that was just intended to be a proof of concept. And actually, as a matter of fact, this single is just a proof of concept. It's really a stepping stone. This isn't the end product by any means. I'm still definitely figuring out which direction I want to go as an artist. And I do even feel like having released a single, made it, put it out, gotten feedback from it, I've promoted it now. Now that I've done all these things, I feel a lot more confident like who I can be. I think I have a lot better of a roadmap of who I want to be as an artist rather than to just like sit there with a paper and pencil and think about what I'm doing. So the motivation behind making this really was just to get something out there. So I just took a recent story I had with somebody that I knew that I'd met one day when I was out with my friend. I had talked to her for a little bit, and then she was, very intensely into me. She was saying all these things. The music kind of describes it a little bit, but the lyrics kind of are intended to tell the story of basically, I think the first verse is, how we had actually met each other and like our first kind of, interactions. The second verse was kind of, what happened afterwards when we had talked more, when we had gotten to know each other a little bit. The third verse is kind of like the end where she's, for some reason, just never talks to me again, basically ghosts me. So it was kind of this weird mishmash of like, and I think there's a lot of people that kind of relate to that feeling of like, you make a new friend, you think things are going to go well, or you meet somebody new, you meet somebody you're going to, think you're going to spend your life with or whatever. And, all of a sudden things just go wayside and you kind of just don't know what kind of comes out of it. So that was kind of the motivation behind the title Sudden Drifts, was like literally she had drifted away from me so suddenly. So that's why it's called Sudden Drifts, but that's the lyrical breakdown of the song. I will admit that a lot of the details of the story were largely true. I did exaggerate a few details and added, some extra stuff that, wasn't actually present. Like, I think there was a line like about, iced tea from Dunkin' or something. It's like she never drank Dunkin' from what I knew or anything like that. But I think most of the story was pretty accurate for the most part. Was like, it was a very intense, and some of it is like very rhetorical. So some of it was like, could see us big cats being little cubs and our eyes spoke, whatever. Those are rhetorical. That's like more of a literary device. That wasn't intended to be literal by any means. That was just kind of intended, add some drama and some spice to it, So yeah, so in a literal case, like I think a lot of it was real, and it was definitely a very interesting moment in my life, but I don't think that it was anything like, there is also just I'm kind of debunking my own lyrics here, but it is a bit a bit exaggerated, but I would never tell like a false story. I think I'm not like, I don't want to be one of those artists that completely lies to you. I'm just but I do like to add a little bit of spice here and there, and so that's really what I'm getting at here. But this was essentially then I was both the rapper and the producer of this entirely. This was entirely a me job. Actually, my buddy Jojo helped mix the Palace demo that I'd made. I had done a mix myself, and then he did his own mix, and then I ended up releasing his version. But for this song, I had entirely done it on my own. I didn't get any other assistance. So So the thing is that the production was very good. So it was one of the first times where I really went into the where I had actually mastered while I had mixed. Usually what happens is that I mix and then I master and I don't touch the master until I mix, but this is the first time I think I've ever made a song in my, years of producing where I had actually done a master while mixing at the same time because I used it as sort of a reference for how loud I wanted my song to be. So otherwise, the song pretty much the beat built itself. I kind of made a little bit of a basic beat and then I just rapped over it. I took some time to make some lyrics and then I rapped over it. I recorded it. I recorded it using my Zoom H5, which is standing over there where it usually stands when I'm recording. I usually stand up and I'm recording, and so that's kind of the studio feel to it. But yeah, and then the production got a little troubled at the end because I did have to end up flying to Houston. So I was just finishing up the last bits of vocal processing and I didn't want to leave that, but I didn't have access to my speakers during that trip. So I had to basically, leave the project, then come back to it. And then after that, then once the vocal processing was finished, then I had to test it in all of its environments. I had to test it with the speakers. I had to test it with the headphones. I had to test it with the car engine. I had to test it with the phone. Once it passed all those, it checked all those boxes, then I was able to fully release it. So there's that to it. So the production got troubled, but the beat as I made it, it was originally just intended to sound as it was. But I think in the end, I decided I want to add a beat switch a little bit. So I added the brass section in the end, and that's where the last verse comes in. I just decided I wanted to, move the emotion of a beat from something kind of like mysterious and kind of getting to know somebody to then something kind of like kind of epic to feel like, to kind of capture the intensity of the emotion of like what just happened, why is this person who suddenly said great things about me and had nothing but peaches and cream just suddenly not want anything to do with me. So that's really what I tried to capture there. But this single, okay, overall was just an experiment. It was just a way for me to figure out like, okay, what direction did I want to go? And I kind of went with something safe. I went with, something like, getting to know somebody and, being in an environment, meeting somebody new. That's something that's been explored a lot in music. So I wanted to start with something that was more of a shared experience and something I could draw a lot of material from, because eventually I do have unique experiences of my own and I do have my own way of writing things. So I just wanted to take time to eventually branch out to those things, but I think it's important to get in the flow of things, and that has paid off for me big time. This was ultimately a great decision I ended up making, was making the single. But as I said, it is just a proof of concept. It is just a stepping stone. It is the first single I'm making. So that's that, and I hope you enjoyed it. Actually, I will continue to promote it until I make my next single, which I am working on. But that also had a bit of delay, but I plan to finish that up as soon as possible. Hopefully get it out within the next few weeks or so. But yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoyed it, and like it was actually a pleasure to make, and hearing actually everybody talk about it. I didn't have very high expectations for it. I thought at the most like maybe few people are gonna look at it and just say whatever, but I have gotten a lot of good responses from it, so I'm frankly I'm blown away, and so I'm happy to keep making more stuff for you guys and keep blowing your mind. So I hope this video was a bit insightful for you, and have a nice day.